Hey, so I want to talk a little bit about why I think Surforge and real-time CSG are well suited or have similar workflows in regards to kind of additive and subtractive geometry and are really compatible and will probably be a good fit for Chisel into the future. I'm going to show a little bit about how I'm going to use um, Chisel, or in this case, I'm going to use real-time CSG in conjunction with Surforge. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about how Surforge works. So Surforge is kind of an interesting tool. It essentially allows you to draw or paint geometry onto um, essentially a texture and then render those different maps, meaning ambient occlusion and normal, etc., from real geometry, which is a lot how higher detail modeling occurs. And so it gives a really beautiful result. An example of this would be if I decide to, on this side over here, for example, polylasso something, sorry, this side, I'm going to, for example, draw a cube over here with the polylasso. And there we go, we've drawn a cube. Now, you can see this cube has got some geometry. If I render it over here, you'll actually see we've got this rendered geometry. Let me get our background be a little bit prettier. So I've got this actual rendered geometry, and I can drag different materials onto different parts if I wanted to, etc. So I'm going to make this white, this inner kind of like maybe a metallic of some kind. You can see it's actually a nice shiny cube here, right? So we've got, some actual geometry generating this information. I'm going to, yeah, cool. And then I can do cool, nifty stuff like this, this, that. Oh, gotta select stuff. And then I can, for example, cut a selection out of that and then re-render this, and voila, we've got this cool slice out here, which is kind of nifty. I can change the lighting scenario so we kind of can see better how this is behaving. Now you'll see that that's kind of cool. That's a nice workflow. I can also do stuff like go and get some detail materials and, place this here and maybe that, rotate this here, drop it there. And then re-render this and we'll say, hey, take a look, we've got these. You'll actually note that over here, this is physical geometry, super fancy. So that means if I actually enable real-time CSG here, we can go in here and do some fancy stuff. Like for example, if I decide I'm going to generate a box, right? I could say, you know what, let's turn on the grid. I'm gonna generate this box here. I'm gonna pop this out here. And you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna grab this. It's positioned, that's fine, we'll edit it. I'm gonna grab these edges. I'm just gonna chamfer them on in. Yeah, there we go. I'm also gonna really quickly change this surface to an ID. So the way that Surforge works is it actually uses an ID, a material ID to associate with different materials. So I'm gonna put ID 3. So now if I actually re-render this, we're gonna see we've got this thing now rendering in here. It's actually rendering it. And if I went and I got a different material, like this metal, maybe this metal here, I can actually see that it is the same one as the background. So let me actually change this whole model's, entire model's surface. Oh. Well, it's going to kind of be a pain in the butt, isn't it? So set it to ID 4, some ID. We'll do ID 0. It's fine. If I re-render this, it's going to change. See, now it's this metallic. If I was to, put a different material on it, it'll now render with everything else, right? So I've been able to now kind of add something in CSG. And if I wanted to do something more fancy, like I could, very easily now, obviously, with all the normal features of real-time CSG, scale things and whatever I want to do. And then I could, for example, do something subtractive. I'm sorry. Let's just say we take a cylinder. We'll create a cylinder right here and extrude it, and then we'll make it subtractive, and we'll grab it once it's There you go, you're good. We'll grab it, move it over here, right? Maybe it's centered nicely. And then we were to re-render this, we'll see now we've got like this, oops, that's not centered. What am I doing? Isn't this right? Weird. And then we render this and, you know, we've got this kind of interesting shape that's been generated. Mind you, I don't really like how all of these materials look. There you go, it's a little bit better. Yeah, and so the other thing I'm not a huge fan of is this back plane is really far, so everything's floating. So if I was actually to pull this down a little bit, it'd probably look better along with get rid of these detail objects. If I render this, you know, this is a little bit farther down in, looks mostly realistic. You know, I could add more detail, whatever I wanted to do. Decide to make our grid a little bit smaller. You know, do something like this and intrude it, right? And then re-render it, and there we've got this little bit of detail. If I wanted to make it more believable, because that's just kind of a boxy hole, I would grab this face and just, oops, sort of play with it. I can't remember how to transfer the image. Yeah, there we go. And then if I re-render this, you know, we've got some detail in here now. You can see it comes out, but it, you know, it's still just a flat texture, which is kind of cool. Anyway, so beyond showing this off, I'm actually going to show you a project that I did before that looks, it's a little bit more appealing. So let me a little bit better by turning that off. Okay, so this scene, I know it's a little garishly bright, is a combination of several different things. This is CSG modeled, just, you know, in real-time CSG, simple stuff. This is using the stuff that's generated by Surforge, which you can tell is very easy for CSG to accomplish. This is really not that complicated. If we had good generators, wouldn't be that bad. All of these different pieces are generated. Only these corner pieces are real-time CSG. You can actually see we get these beautiful hard surface results that are just incredible. Let me re-render this. There you go. So this is where it was supposed to look like. I think that's really very impressive. Considering that this was done, like these corner parts were done totally with CSG, right? And if you were to have a UV'd CSG environment, right? So if you modeled some complicated environment, you'd be able to very easily then say like, hey, I want this UV here, as long as you had a UV mapping step, which we don't have yet. We don't have a UV mapping step, which this would require. But then you could go into a detail mode where you select a face and you say, I want to make a detail map for that face. And you can cut some shapes out of that face and model in little pipes and edges like this, like I did here. So you'd have a detail mode per face in some situations. And then you could tile that in whatever you need to do, and then it would just render it, right? And the render would create these beautiful, we'd have to atlas and a bunch of other beautiful things, right? But, but you know, you could create all these higher end materials. So yeah, that's kind of my reasoning as to why I think they fit well together. The beauty of this whole system is I can make, you know, very quick modifications if I wanted to, right? Because I can just go in here and decide that this is going to go all the way over here and then re-render, and then what do you know, it's moved. And so if you had different modes, and this is just a piece of geometry, if it was an actual CSG object, we could do a lot more with it. If I render this now, it moves it and all that interesting stuff. So yeah. Other cool, this also goes to show some of the ways we can use generators in interesting ways, because if I wanted to like divide up this face or something, I could just go, oops, I need to actually, stupid lasso. I need to actually grab this tool, and I can go like this, here, there, and then I can cut it up really quickly. You see now we have a slice. And that's a really kind of powerful ability to do that. And so that's some of the benefits and things we can learn from Surforge is the ability to do really interesting, quick slices and have it update textures. This is all stuff that CSG could do easily, right? We'd need to figure out how to get the generators to do this kind of thing. So right now he's using these complicated, these are all loops, right? And he essentially has loops that generate some geometry in this shape. He's got a bunch of really powerful generators, but none of them are CSG. They all just overlap, and they're literally all just separate 3D models that get generated, which is brilliant, right? You know, these are all separate things. It's brilliant, but now if I was to render this, it would try to tile them up, which looks very strange, because it's literally coming from a camera, right? There's a camera invisibly pointing somewhere up here, probably this thing, yeah, that is actually taking a picture and generating with shaders many different views. So these are all just models, right? And so this is all well within the range of CSG. In fact, CSG would do this way better because you could build your own generators. Like right now, if I wanted to change how this face looked, I've got a finite number of types here. Like I'd change it to maybe this type. If I select this and I say change to look like this, and I re-render it, you'll see that, well, you can't really tell too much of a difference. But if I select it and make it look like very different, then you could see, oh, you know, we've got this totally different type, but I have only the finite number of them that they have available to me here. I don't have that ability, you know, to make my own, which is what I would love to see with CSG style solutions for this. Isn't that cool? There's so many cool ones here. There are a lot of cool ones, to be fair, but what's cool is this is all so doable with CSG. It's easy. What does it look like in pipes? Yeah, look, it has even pipe generators. It's kind of snazzy. All these inlay generators, so it looks like an inlay. Pretty snazzy stuff. So these are all different modes that it has, and it seems so ripe to be able to play with it and kind of a CSG setting. This is all just geometry work, right? It's all within our realm of, well, probably within realm of playing with. So yeah, that's my little overview of why I think they're relevant. Thanks.